Anil Seth, Being You, A New Science of Consciousness. Immerse yourself into the intriguing world of consciousness in this summary of Anil Seth's Being You, A New Science of Consciousness. Our perception of the world, the experiences we have, and our very sense of self are all deeply connected to our brains, which acts as a master illusionist. This summary delves into the real problems of consciousness, exploring cutting-edge theories such as integrated information theory, IIT, and groundbreaking experiments in Bayesian reasoning, which present a new understanding of our perceptual experiences.
Dissolving Consciousness Mysteries. Groundbreaking philosopher Thomas Nagel introduced the notion of consciousness as a unique, shared experience in the 1970s, sparking the question, why does it exist? While science hasn't solved the hard problem of consciousness yet, we can dissolve it into smaller, real problems, to understand its different aspects. By exploring the connections between brain activity and conscious experiences, we can dissolve the mysteries surrounding consciousness, just as we've done for the once mysterious notion of biological life. In his 1974 essay, philosopher Thomas Nagel brought forth an intriguing question: what does it feel like to be a bat? While he wasn't genuinely curious about bats, Nagel aimed to explore the nature of consciousness in living beings. At the time, scientists often confused consciousness with intelligence or human-like attributes. However, now it is widely accepted that consciousness is a unique, shared experience amongst living organisms, each with its distinct subjective essence. Despite this realization, one fundamental question persists: why does consciousness even exist? This query is coined as the hard problem of consciousness, and many believe it to be virtually unsolvable. For example, even if we knew every biological mechanism underlying our thoughts, emotions, and actions, we couldn't explain why they are accompanied by a distinct feeling of being ourselves. Consciousness could be likened to a secret sauce added to the recipe of life. Although the hard problem may seem daunting, it doesn't mean we cannot uncover its ingredients. Science has numerous tools and theories for explaining various conscious experiences. It's just a matter of assembling them systematically. Historically, science has demystified seemingly unsolvable puzzles. For instance, before the 20th century, people believed in the philosophy of vitalism, which argued that living beings possessed a supernatural energy, making the notion of biological life enigmatic. However, as biology advanced, scientists discovered that life was more of a scalable assortment of distinct biological processes than an unfathomable property. Similarly, we may not solve the hard problem of consciousness outright but can dissolve it into the real problems of consciousness. This involves studying the aspects of consciousness, such as how brain activity within the visual cortex yields the experience of seeing various shades of red. The more we understand how physical patterns in the brain correspond to conscious experiences, the less puzzling consciousness will become. By dissolving the problem into manageable pieces, we inch closer to unveiling the mysteries surrounding consciousness. Pursuing what's most important. Vi Sikahema, once a football player and now a news anchor with NBC, shares the incredible story of his parents from Tonga. Despite living in a house missing two sides, they made tremendous sacrifices to focus on their most essential goals, demonstrating unwavering commitment and dedication. Their life choices show the need to identify what truly matters to us and focus on achieving it with courage, even when faced with criticism from others. Growing up in Tonga, Vi Sikahema's family wasn't rich by any means. In fact, their home lacked two walls. The surprising truth? It was by choice. Vi's parents decided to gradually sell their house's clapboard to neighbors. The purpose of this unusual decision was not to put food on the table or pay bills, it was to finance a once-in-a-lifetime religious journey. A crucial lesson emerges from their story: concentrate on what genuinely matters to you and confidently disregard the rest. Vi's parents belonged to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly known as the Mormon Church. They believed in getting sealed, the act of making wedding vows eternal, which allowed them to remain together with their children even after death. The nearest temple, where sealing could occur, was in New Zealand, a whopping 1,500 miles from Tonga. Despite the challenges and costs, Vi's parents made that journey, not allowing any obstacle to overshadow their faith and the value it brought to their lives. Their determination and dedication to their goals symbolize the concept of what's most important, WMI, the driving force that propels individuals to seek fulfillment in their lives. While religion may be central to Vi's parents, others may find their WMI in relationships, philanthropy, or life ambitions. Identifying your WMI is crucial in shaping your life and the decisions you make. Remain steadfast when pursuing it, and keep in mind that the opinions and judgments of others should never derail you from your path towards achieving your most cherished goals. Unraveling consciousness mysteries. Consciousness remains an enigma, but integrated information theory, IIT, offers a fascinating perspective on its nature and measurement. Developed by scientists Tononi and Edelman, IIT proposes that consciousness is integrated information, where each conscious experience is unique, informative, and unified. A system's level of consciousness can then be measured by a factor called phi, which quantifies the level of integrated information generated by a system compared to its individual components. However, practically measuring phi in human brains is currently impossible, as we would need to know all the various ways our brains could behave. While scientifically untestable for now, IIT provides a captivating philosophical framework for understanding consciousness. A captivating theory that provides insights into the enigmatic nature of consciousness is integrated information theory, IIT. Developed by the pioneering scientists Tononi and Edelman, IIT suggests that consciousness arises from integrated information, where each conscious experience is both specific and unified. Our experiences are informative, as every event we encounter is distinct, and they are integrated, as we perceive the various aspects of a situation as a coherent whole. IIT conceptualizes the brain as an information integration machine that pairs extensive input with optimal organization. This integration enables the brain to process input in a unified and informative way, forming the basis of conscious experiences. IIT also introduces a novel method to measure consciousness with a metric called phi, which assesses the degree to which a system generates integrated information. Phi evaluates the amount of information created by a system compared to the information yielded by its individual components. Contrary to expectations, most complex systems generate more information than their separate parts, as the individual components are deeply interconnected and form complex relationships. The higher a system's phi, the greater its level of integrated information and thus, its consciousness. In the context of IIT, systems with low information or integration will exhibit a low phi score. Conversely, the intricately connected human brain, with its billions of neurons, should boast a remarkably high score. However, in order to measure phi in practice, we must understand all potential brain behaviors, which is virtually unattainable. Presently, we can only observe our brains in action, not the myriad possibilities of what they might do. While IIT's most significant aspect, measuring phi, remains scientifically unproven, the theory still serves as a stimulating philosophical framework for exploring consciousness. By considering consciousness as an integration of information, we may inch closer to unraveling the mysteries of the human mind. Conscious hallucinations revealed. Our conscious experiences are essentially our brain's controlled hallucinations, and what we perceive as reality is merely our brain's best guess at it. Conscious perception works from the inside out, with the brain forming hypotheses based on past experiences and using sensory signals to correct them. While there is a physical world out there, our perception of secondary qualities like color, taste, or smell are subjective and depend on our individual perceptions. What if the reality you experience every day is mostly a controlled hallucination crafted by your brain? Surprisingly, this idea is not as far-fetched as it may seem. Our brain constantly creates and organizes information that shapes our perception of reality, and it does so in a fascinating way. When we are conscious, we are aware of various things like sights, sounds, smells, or our own thoughts. We tend to believe that the sensations we are experiencing are directly linked to the external world around us. However, this isn't entirely accurate. Our senses do not give our brain a clear and unadulterated view of the world. Instead, they provide fragments of data that our brain has to process and make sense of, as it is incapable of directly experiencing the world. The crux of this idea lies in the concept that our consciousness is merely a set of controlled hallucinations created by our brain. Traditionally, it was believed that our senses gather data from our surroundings and send it to our brain, which then attempts to interpret the information. However, a radical new perspective emerged in the 19th century, proposed by German scientist Hermann von Helmholtz. Helmholtz suggested that conscious perception functions the other way around. The brain continuously forms hypotheses based on past experiences and utilizes sensory signals to refine those hypotheses. In other words, perception is an unconscious inference process that works from the inside out. Consequently, our consciousness contents closely resemble hallucinations, as our brain essentially generates them. Thankfully, these hallucinations are typically well controlled. While our brain constantly predicts and anticipates the world around us, it relies on sensory input to adjust those predictions. Real hallucinations occur when our perceptual expectations become so powerful that they detach from external reality. In many ways, our shared reality is simply a collective perceptual hallucination. Undoubtedly, a physical world exists with primary qualities such as texture, motion, and space. However, secondary qualities like color, taste, or smell are subject to our personal perceptions. So while there is a tangible world out there, our brain's controlled hallucinations are what actually shape our reality. Brain's hallucinatory predictions. Our brains function as Bayesian prediction machines, constantly making educated guesses about the world using prior beliefs and probabilities. These predictions are continuously updated based on incoming sensory signals, ultimately shaping our perceptions. This idea was introduced in the 18th century by Reverend Thomas Bayes, and art historian Ernst Gombrich has popularized the concept of beholder's share, capturing the idea that perceptions are also colored by individual beliefs and expectations. Recent scientific research supports this notion, showcasing how expectation can significantly influence the speed of perception. Our perception of the world is influenced by the continuous process of guessing and updating our beliefs in response to incoming sensory signals. Reverend Thomas Bayes introduced this idea in the form of Bayesian reasoning in the 18th century. This method of reasoning entails using probabilities to identify the most plausible explanation for an observation, taking into account prior beliefs and contextual information. For instance, if you notice your lawn is wet, you might wonder if it's from rain or the sprinklers. To determine the most likely cause, you could consider factors like your geographical location, forgetfulness, and weather forecasts. Like Bayes, we choose the explanation with the highest overall probability based on our unique personal circumstances. Our brains act as Bayesian prediction machines, drawing on past knowledge and beliefs to make educated guesses about the world, which are constantly updated as we process new sensory information. These beliefs can be concrete, like the appearance of a pet, or more abstract, such as visualizing light sources. This idea has been explored and expanded by art historian Ernst Gombrich, who coined the term beholder's share to emphasize how viewers contribute to the interpretation of art based on their pre-existing beliefs and concepts. Modern scientific research substantiates Gombrich's philosophy, showing that our perceptions are greatly influenced by our expectations. Researcher Zaire Pinto conducted an experiment in which participants were shown rapidly changing geometric patterns in one eye, while a picture of a house or face was gradually revealed in the other eye. Participants who were instructed to look for a house detected it faster than the face and vice versa, demonstrating the impact of expectation on perception. In summary, our brains are continuously making and updating educated guesses about our surroundings, influenced by Bayesian reasoning and personal beliefs. This process highlights the complexity of our perceptions, which are far from objective, and demonstrates how factors like expectation can significantly impact our experiences. The illusion of selfhood. Our sense of self is a fascinating multi-layered construct, made up of embodied, perspectival, volitional, narrative, and social aspects. It acts as a product of various controlled hallucinations working in harmony. However, it is not an immaterial soul or a fixed identity, as proven by various unusual experiences where these layers can separate or become dysfunctional. Ultimately, our cohesive sense of self is a survival tool created by our brains. Diving into the enigma of consciousness, we find that our self-perception, or the feeling of being you, isn't a manifestation of an immaterial soul hidden within us. Rather, it's a complex fabricated illusion, a controlled hallucination generated by our brains. The intriguing part is that our sense of self isn't a singular sensation, it comprises multiple intertwined elements. These aspects include embodied selfhood, the feeling that our body is genuinely ours, perspectival selfhood, the unique viewpoint from which we perceive the world, volitional selfhood, free will, the belief that we control our actions, the narrative self, our sense of personal identity shaped by our history and experiences, and the social self, our awareness of how others perceive us. Combined, these intricate pieces create the overall experience of being you. However, our unified self is far from being a static, unchangeable entity. Various circumstances and experiences illustrate how vastly different combinations of selfhood can separate or become dysfunctional, proving that our sense of self is anything but stable. Take alien hand syndrome, where individuals lose the connection between their embodied and volitional selfhood, feeling as though their hands' actions are not caused by them. Then, there are out-of-body experiences triggered by anesthesia, epilepsy, or drug-induced states, which challenge one's perspectival selfhood. Even experiments in virtual reality reveal how effortlessly we can adopt another body as our own, as demonstrated at Barcelona's Be Another lab, where visitors swap bodies and quickly adapt to the experience. Furthermore, cases of split-brain patients, where the brain's hemispheres have been surgically severed to alleviate epilepsy symptoms, show the development of distinct personalities within the same individual. These examples emphasize the fragility and malleability of our sense of self. But why do our brains create such an illusion? The answer lies in its usefulness to our survival. Having a unified sense of self simplifies our complex environment and assists in navigating life's challenges. It's not mere whimsy, it's essential for our existence. And just like that, the intricate illusion of selfhood continues its dance, keeping us grounded and alive. Unraveling Consciousness Origins. René Descartes, a 17th-century French philosopher, claimed humans are unique beast machines that possess a divine, immaterial soul. However, consciousness doesn't require an immaterial soul, it's an intrinsic part of our living, breathing body machine. As a product of biological evolution, consciousness is a natural function of our animal bodies with survival purposes. This understanding relies on the long-forgotten scientific field of cybernetics, which highlights control-oriented perception and our tendency to regulate present and future bodily states. Therefore, our controlled hallucinations, along with our experience of volition, help us navigate the world and learn from our previous actions, making consciousness vital to our existence. As René Descartes asserted in the 17th century, humans are unique beast machines with divine, immaterial souls. However, our consciousness is actually a natural, inseparable element of our living, breathing body machine. It enables us to experience the world, interact with it, and is an integral part of our existence. Consciousness is a result of our biological evolution, just like any other bodily trait. While evolution did not design us to investigate ourselves, it did provide us with the means to survive and procreate. Consciousness and self-consciousness, therefore, serve as valuable tools in our survival kit. To comprehend the significance of consciousness in our survival, we must delve into cybernetics, a once popular scientific field from the 1970s that investigated how animals and machines manage their bodies and communicate. Pioneering cybernetic theorists, William Ross Ashby and Roger Conant, introduced control-oriented perception, highlighting how living organisms regulate vital bodily functions like body temperature and oxygen levels. Control-oriented perception steers our senses in specific directions, such as seeking food when hungry or evading danger. Animals, including humans, continually combat the second law of thermodynamics, the inevitable progression of a system toward disintegration or higher entropy. Survival necessitates maintaining low entropy, and to achieve this, organisms construct perceptual models of their surroundings, facilitating prediction, action, and entropy minimization. Humans experience control within their hallucinations, impacting self-consciousness as well. For example, the belief that we could have acted differently in a given scenario, despite biological and physical influences suggesting otherwise, fosters learning and fuels our ability to adapt in future situations. Our experience of volition, or our sense of free will, is a controlled and controlling hallucination that allows us to better navigate the world around us. In conclusion, consciousness plays an essential role in our survival and interaction with the environment. Cybernetics provides a framework to understand its significance in maintaining life and preserving essential bodily states. Our controlled hallucinations and experience of volition are key to our continuous learning and evolution as conscious beings. Animal consciousness unraveled. Animals possess varying degrees of consciousness, with some showing capabilities closer to human consciousness. However, understanding and measuring animal consciousness is no simple feat, as different species manifest it in unique ways. Non-biological entities like AI complicate the matter further, raising questions on whether machines could ever become conscious like living beings. In times past, engaging animals in legal disputes was not an uncommon practice. Executing pigs involved in crimes, from harming children to consuming holy items, was deemed justifiable. Looking back, we may find such actions absurd along with Descartes' perspective that animals are mere beast machines, devoid of an inner world. So, what is the extent of animal consciousness? Finding an accurate measure of animal consciousness remains elusive. The mirror test served as a popular method, wherein an animal's self-recognition in the mirror was associated with consciousness. Most mammals, barring some apes, dolphins, and an elephant, failed the test, including dogs and monkeys. In spite of these results, it's essential to consider that animals may have other reasons for failing the test, and may still possess consciousness. The prevalent belief that animals, such as mammals, birds, and fish, exhibit degrees of consciousness is backed by similarities in brain activity during sleep and waking states compared to humans. However, evaluating animal consciousness based on their likeness to our own has limitations. Some animals, like the octopus, demonstrate a unique form of consciousness despite vastly different neurological structures. Octopuses, known for their intelligence, possess brains that appear to be distributed throughout their bodies, with limbs having individual consciousness. Despite these abilities, they haven't passed the mirror test. The concept of consciousness becomes even more complex when considering non-biological entities like artificial intelligence. While sci-fi authors and AI enthusiasts argue that AI could achieve consciousness, questions arise about a machine's capacity to replicate the multifaceted nature of human consciousness. Intertwined with our living, biological existence, consciousness incorporates an array of experiences and perceptions, difficult for any machine to mimic. Ultimately, consciousness in animals is a diverse and complex subject, and we are still exploring its depths. Looking beyond mere similarities to humans, diverse species display remarkable and differing levels of consciousness that continue to baffle and intrigue us.
As we reach the end of our journey into Anil Seth's book A Being You, A New Science of Consciousness, we have gained a new understanding of the enigmatic phenomenon that accompanies our existence. We have unraveled the complex process of perception, explored our sense of self, and learned that every living being experiences a level of consciousness. Ultimately, Seth posits that consciousness is inherently tied to our biological nature, making it challenging to comprehend how non-biological entities could replicate this fascinating aspect of the human experience. As we continue to probe the mysteries of consciousness, we are left with a newfound appreciation for the intricate workings of our minds and the magnificent illusion of reality that they create for us.